It was a calm morning when the alien fleet first appeared in Earth's skies. The people of Earth had never seen anything like it before. Massive ships, each one the size of a city, hovered silently over the planet. The world's leaders gathered in emergency meetings, unsure of what to do. Earth's military was put on high alert, but the ships didn't come in aggressively. Instead, they hovered peacefully, as if waiting for something. The aliens who arrived were unlike anything humans had imagined. They called themselves the Astelians, and they came from a distant planet far from Earth. Their skin was smooth and blue, their bodies thin but graceful, and their eyes glowed a soft purple. Though they were peaceful and kind, they looked fragile compared to the humans who had faced the dangers of Earth for centuries. They wore strange clothing, which seemed to change colors based on the light, and carried no visible weapons. Their leader, Atheon, stepped forward first. His voice was calm, and he spoke in a strange language at first, but humans quickly realized they could understand him. It was through a special device, a gift from the Astelians' advanced technology, that the message was translated. The aliens told humanity that they had come in peace, seeking an alliance to share knowledge, resources, and technology. "We have heard of your planet," Atheon's voice echoed over the global communication systems, "and we have watched as your people survive and thrive on a world full of danger. We wish to learn from you, and perhaps we can help each other." The leaders of Earth were cautious but curious. They had heard stories of the peace-loving Astelians, but something didn't seem quite right. Why would such an advanced species need help from Earth, a planet known for its harsh and dangerous environments? And why had they come here at all? Days passed, and the Astelians spent time on Earth, offering their technology and wisdom. But soon, the humans began to notice something strange. The aliens seemed uncomfortable in their surroundings. Whenever they ventured outside their ships, they appeared weak and fragile, often struggling to adapt to Earth's air, food, and climate. It became clear that they were not accustomed to life on a dangerous world like Earth. One evening, a large, shadowy figure appeared in the distance. It was a Ravager, a creature of terrible strength and terrifying appearance. Its body was massive and covered in armor, with sharp claws and eyes that burned like fire. The Ravagers had been following the Astelians for days, but until now, they had stayed hidden. The humans, who had been watching from afar, immediately recognized the threat. The Ravagers were known to be ruthless hunters, capable of taking down entire civilizations. The Astelians, clearly frightened, retreated into their ships. Their technology could protect them, but they were not prepared to face such a monster in the wilds of Earth. In that moment, the humans knew what they had to do. The world's military forces, led by the toughest and most experienced warriors, began to prepare for battle. The Astelians' peaceful approach could not save them now. The time had come for Earth's people to show their strength. The sound of engines roared as military vehicles sped across the landscape. The humans were ready. They had faced dangers from every corner of Earth, storms, wild animals, and even war, but nothing like this. The Ravagers were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Massive, deadly creatures with strength that could crush entire cities and cunning minds that made them dangerous hunters. But Earth's warriors were used to fighting the impossible. Among the soldiers was Captain James Carter, a man whose name had become known across the world for his courage and skill. He had been a soldier for years, trained in the deserts of the Middle East, the jungles of South America, and the frozen wastes of Siberia. No matter where the battlefield was, Carter had survived. He knew how to adapt, how to think fast, and how to use his environment to his advantage. His team was the best of the best, made up of veterans who had seen more than their fair share of war. They were called Deathworlders by other civilizations because of how hard they fought and how hard they lived. They were made for this kind of challenge. When the Ravagers attacked, they came with terrifying speed. Their ships landed quickly, and before anyone could react, they were charging toward the nearest city. The humans, however, didn't panic. They had fought many enemies before, and they would fight again. Captain Carter quickly assembled his team. We don't know much about these Ravagers, but we do know one thing. They underestimate us. That's their mistake. His voice was calm, but there was fire in his eyes. The soldiers under his command nodded. They knew what had to be done. These aliens might have advanced technology, but the humans had something they didn't. Experience. Experience with survival. Experience with fighting enemies that were bigger, stronger, and smarter than they were. Meanwhile, the Astelians watched, unsure of how to help. They were kind, gentle people who had never known war. On their peaceful planet, they had built a society based on cooperation, not violence. But the Ravagers cared nothing for peace. They were ruthless and hungry for destruction. Atheon, the leader of the Astelians, stood with a worried look on his face as the humans prepared for battle. Are they sure they can win? He asked one of his officers. They are Deathworlders, the officer replied. They live for this. But Atheon wasn't so sure. The humans were strong, yes, but the Ravagers were terrifying. They had technology that could slice through steel, and their physical strength was beyond anything the Astelians had ever seen. Still, Atheon knew there was no turning back. If Earth's warriors could not stop the Ravagers, then all would be lost. The humans, despite their weaknesses, fragile bodies, short lifespans, were now their only hope. The battle began in earnest. The Deathworlders led the charge, using their training to outmaneuver the Ravagers in the dense forests of Earth. They set traps, lured the creatures into narrow paths, and used the terrain to their advantage. The Ravagers, though powerful, were not used to fighting in such a wild and unpredictable environment. At first, the Ravagers seemed unstoppable, but the humans were relentless. They fought back with everything they had: fire, strategy, and most importantly, their will to survive. Captain Carter watched as his team set up ambush after ambush, taking down Ravager after Ravager. We're not just fighting for Earth, Carter said, his voice firm over the comms. We're fighting for everyone, everywhere. Let's show these creatures who we are. With each passing hour, the battle turned in humanity's favor. The Ravagers may have had advanced weapons, but the humans had something stronger: heart. The Ravagers were unlike anything the humans had ever faced. They were not just predators in the usual sense. They were intelligent hunters, skilled in the art of war. Their ship, shaped like a dark, menacing claw, had landed on Earth with terrifying speed, and from it came creatures that seemed to step out of nightmares. Massive, with thick, armored hides and eyes that glowed with an eerie red light, the Ravagers were a force of pure destruction. Their bodies were built for combat. Standing over 7 feet tall, their muscular limbs ended in sharp, talon-like claws capable of ripping through metal. Their teeth were jagged, designed to tear apart anything that came too close. And their minds were just as dangerous. The Ravagers had a culture built around hunting, and they had been hunting for centuries. Their only goal was to kill, to conquer, and to feed. Captain Carter and his team quickly realized that these were no ordinary beasts. The Ravagers were not mindless monsters, but cunning strategists. They had an advanced understanding of combat tactics, making them dangerous opponents. Their weapons were crude compared to human technology, but their physical power and hunting instincts made them deadly. As the battle raged on, the humans learned more about their enemies. The Ravagers' ships were equipped with weapons that could melt steel and send shockwaves through the ground, but they had weaknesses too. They relied heavily on their physical strength and raw power, but their overconfidence made them blind to the human strategies. The Deathworlders were smart, using their knowledge of Earth's terrain to outsmart the Ravagers at every turn. One thing was clear: the Ravagers had come to Earth for a reason. They were not just looking to conquer. They were hunting something specific: the Astelians. It became apparent that the aliens' advanced technology was what drew the Ravagers to this planet. They had been tracking the Astelians for weeks, and now that they had found them, they would not stop until they had destroyed them. The Astalians, meanwhile, had watched with growing fear. They were not warriors. Their planet, Astalian, was a peaceful paradise, free from the violence that had shaped Earth. They had never known war, and now they found themselves surrounded by enemies. Atheon, their leader, stood beside Captain Carter, his eyes filled with worry. "These creatures, they are not just attacking. They are hunting us," he said, his voice trembling. "We thought we could outrun them, but now they found us." The humans didn't have time to comfort the aliens. They had to fight back, and they had to do it fast. The Ravagers were closing in, and their numbers seemed endless. But Captain Carter wasn't worried. He knew that humanity had faced worse odds before. Deathworlders didn't back down, no matter the enemy. "Let them come," Carter said, his eyes cold with determination. "We're not going to let these monsters destroy anything. Not Earth. Not the Astalians. We fight to the last." The humans prepared for the next wave of Ravagers. They knew the battle was far from over, but they also knew something the Ravagers didn't: the will to survive, the strength to keep going, no matter what. It was something no enemy could ever defeat. The humans had won the first few battles, but everyone knew that the war was far from over. The Ravagers were relentless, and their numbers seemed endless. But the most surprising thing was that the Astalians, despite their advanced technology, had not been able to help much in the fight. Their fragile bodies and peaceful nature made them poorly suited for combat. The humans knew that if they were to win this war, the Astalians would need to become warriors too. Captain Carter and his team gathered the alien diplomats in a large hidden military base deep in the forests of Earth. The humans had set up a special training camp, a place where they could teach the Astalians the skills they would need to survive in battle. It wasn't going to be easy. The Astalians had never known war, and their peaceful nature made them hesitant to fight. But if they were going to survive the Ravagers' hunt, they had to change. Atheon, the leader of the Astalians, was the first to step forward. His thin blue skin looked fragile compared to the rough, battle-worn humans, but his eyes were filled with determination. "We must learn," he said, his voice steady. "We will fight for our people, for our planet, and for Earth. Show us how." The humans were ready. They had faced the toughest environments on Earth, trained in jungles, deserts, and icy tundras. They knew what it took to survive in a world where every moment could be a fight for life. Now, they would pass on that knowledge to the Astalians. The training began immediately. It wasn't easy, especially since the Astalians were not used to the harsh conditions of Earth. They were taught the basics first: how to move through dangerous terrain, how to use weapons, and most importantly, how to stay alive. The humans pushed them to their limits, testing their strength, patience, and courage. At first, the Astalians struggled. Their bodies, though agile, were not as strong as the humans. They had never been exposed to the harsh elements of Earth. The cold of the northern tundra made them shiver, and the heat of the desert drained their energy. But slowly, they began to improve. They learned how to endure the pain, how to move silently through the jungle, how to use Earth's resources to their advantage. Atheon found the training especially difficult. He was not used to physical exertion, and his body, though graceful, wasn't made for combat. But as the days passed, he grew stronger. He learned to use a rifle, to fight hand-to-hand, and even to set traps for the Ravagers. The humans saw a change in him, a fire that had not been there before. He was no longer just the leader of a peaceful people. He was becoming a warrior. The Astalians were not as quick to adapt as the humans, but they had something the humans didn't: advanced technology. They created gadgets to help them fight: camouflage cloaks, energy shields, and devices that could disable enemy weapons. With the humans' training and the Astalians' tech, they became a force to be reckoned with. The day came when Captain Carter looked at his team and the Astalian warriors standing side by side, ready to face the Ravagers again. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice full of pride. "You're not just survivors anymore. You're warriors." Athian nodded, a new confidence in his eyes. "We will fight together." The humans and Astelians stood ready, united. They had trained for this moment, and now they were ready to take the fight to the Ravagers. The real battle was just beginning. The moment had come. After weeks of intense training, the humans and the Astelians were ready to face the Ravagers once again. The air was thick with tension as Captain Carter and his team gathered their forces. The Ravagers had already attacked several human cities, leaving destruction in their wake. This time, the humans would take the fight to them. "We hit them hard," Captain Carter said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We won't give them a chance to retreat. We'll strike fast and hit them where it hurts." The humans and Astelians worked together, preparing their weapons and strategies. The Astelians, now trained in combat, were no longer the fragile diplomats they had once been. They were warriors, ready to fight beside the humans. They had learned the basics: how to shoot, how to move in the wilderness, and how to survive in a world full of danger. The humans had taught them all of that, and now they would use it. The plan was simple but risky. They would infiltrate the Ravager base, a heavily fortified compound deep in the heart of a remote jungle. The humans knew the terrain well, having trained in similar environments. They would move quietly, using the cover of the dense trees to get close. The Astelians, with their advanced technology, would help disable the Ravagers' weapons and communications, giving the humans the upper hand. It was time to move. Under the cover of night, the combined forces of humans and Astelians began their march toward the enemy base. The jungle was alive with sounds: chirping insects, distant animal calls, and the rustling of leaves. But the soldiers moved silently, like shadows in the dark. They had learned how to move undetected, blending in with their surroundings. Athian, now dressed in combat gear, led a small team of Astelian warriors. His body had become stronger since the training began, and he carried a rifle with the same skill as any human soldier. His eyes were sharp, his mind focused. He had come a long way from the fearful leader who had first arrived on Earth. As they neared the Ravager base, the tension grew. The humans set up their first set of traps, hidden in the dense underbrush. They had learned how to use the environment to their advantage, setting snares and tripwires to catch the Ravagers off guard. The Astelians used their technology to disable the enemy sensors, cloaking their movements as they approached the base. Suddenly, the first Ravager patrol appeared. They were big, their armor glinting in the dim light. But the humans and Astelians were ready. With a signal from Carter, the ambush was set in motion. The humans opened fire first, their rifles sending a barrage of bullets at the unsuspecting Ravagers. The Astelians followed, using their advanced weapons to take down the enemy's communication systems and disable their vehicles. The battle was fierce, but the humans and Astelians had the advantage. The Ravagers, unprepared for such an organized and coordinated attack, were quickly overwhelmed. The humans fought with everything they had, using their training to outmaneuver the larger, stronger creatures. Athian, though still new to combat, fought with the heart of a true warrior. He moved with precision, his rifle aimed perfectly as he took down one Ravager after another. By the time the Ravagers realized they were under attack, it was too late. Their base was in ruins, their forces scattered. The humans and Astelians had struck with speed and strength, leaving the Ravagers no time to recover. As the smoke cleared, Captain Carter stood tall, looking over the battlefield. The first strike had been a success, but he knew this was only the beginning. There were more battles to come, and they would need every ounce of strength and bravery they had. "We've made a dent," Carter said, his voice calm but filled with pride. "But this war isn't over. Not yet." The battle at the Ravager base had been a hard-won victory. The humans and Astelians had struck quickly, taking down the enemy's defenses and disabling their weapons. But Captain Carter knew this was only the beginning. The Ravagers were not defeated yet. In fact, they were angry. They had underestimated the humans and Astelians, but they would not make the same mistake again. The Ravagers, wounded but not broken, retreated to their main stronghold. It was located in the mountains, hidden deep in a valley where only the strongest could survive. The humans had learned a lot from their first victory, but they also knew that the next battle would be even harder. For days, the humans and Astelians gathered their forces. They trained harder, improved their tactics, and strengthened their weapons. Captain Carter briefed his team on the next step of the plan. They would strike the Ravager stronghold in a full-force assault, hoping to catch the enemy off guard before they could regroup. But they needed more than just speed this time. The Ravagers had learned from their defeat, and they would be ready for the humans. The night before the attack, Captain Carter stood on a high ridge, looking out over the valley. The stars were bright, and the wind was cold, but his mind was sharp. He thought of everything they had fought for. Earth, the Astelians, and their survival. The Ravagers were vicious, but they were not invincible. The humans had something the Ravagers didn't: the will to fight, to survive, no matter the cost. "We've come this far," Carter said, his voice low but determined. "Tomorrow, we finish this." As dawn broke, the combined forces of humans and Astelians began their march toward the Ravager stronghold. The mountains loomed ahead, their rocky peaks covered in snow. The path was steep and difficult, but the soldiers were ready. They had trained in every kind of environment, and this was no different. The first sign that something was wrong came when they reached the valley. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air smelled thick with smoke. A Ravager scout, caught in one of the traps they had set, warned them too late. The Ravagers had set up their own defenses, and they were ready. Without warning, the sky above them lit up with explosions. The Ravagers had fired missiles from hidden positions, catching the humans and Astelians off guard. The blast sent rocks and dirt flying, knocking several soldiers to the ground. Smoke filled the air, and the sound of sirens echoed from the enemy base. Captain Carter immediately gave orders to regroup. "Move. Get to cover," he shouted. The humans and Astelians dove behind rocks and trees, returning fire at the Ravagers' positions. The battle had begun, and it was clear that the Ravagers were not going down without a fight. The Ravagers were everywhere, charging from the shadows, their armored bodies almost indestructible. But the humans didn't hesitate. They fought back with everything they had. The Astelians, armed with their advanced weapons, struck from the rear, using energy blasts to disable the Ravager vehicles and clear the way for the humans. It was chaos. Explosions rocked the battlefield, and the air was thick with gunfire. The Ravagers were fierce, but they were also desperate. They had underestimated the power of the humans and the courage of the Astelians. They fought with all their strength, but the humans were not backing down. "We're not giving up," Captain Carter yelled, his voice rising above the noise of battle. "Push forward. We take that base." With each step, they fought harder. The humans and Astelians pushed through the Ravager defenses, moving closer to the heart of the enemy stronghold. The Ravagers were on the defensive now, retreating into their fortifications. But it wasn't enough. The humans and Astelians had come too far to lose now. The battle raged on, but the outcome was clear. The Ravagers had underestimated their enemies, and now they would pay the price. The battle had taken a heavy toll. The Ravagers were fierce, and despite their previous victories, the humans and Astelians found themselves fighting a war of attrition. Each step forward was met with resistance, and each loss was felt deeply. Captain Carter watched his team, now battered but still determined, as they pushed deeper into the Ravager stronghold. The enemy had regrouped, and it seemed like the battle would never end. "Keep pushing," Carter ordered, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We can't stop now. Not after everything we'd fought for." The soldiers nodded, but their faces were tired. Even the Astelians, who had learned to fight in such a short time, were starting to show signs of exhaustion. Their bodies were not built for war like the humans, and the long days of battle were taking their toll. But they were determined. They knew what was at stake. If they lost now, everything they had worked for would be lost too. In the distance, a Ravager warlord watched from the shadows. This leader was unlike any the humans had faced before. Taller than the others, with dark red skin and a crown of jagged metal, the warlord had been watching the humans closely. He had seen their strength, their tactics, and most importantly, their will to fight. And he knew that they were dangerous. He was not afraid of the humans' weapons. He had faced worse. But what troubled him was their refusal to give up. It was something the Ravagers had never encountered. They were used to enemies who broke easily, who fell at the first sign of defeat. But not these humans. Not these Deathworlders. The warlord knew that something had to change if the Ravagers were to win. He ordered his forces to launch a full-scale counterattack, using everything they had left to crush the humans' resolve. The Ravagers unleashed everything in their arsenal: missiles, plasma weapons, and even their most fearsome beasts, giant creatures bred for destruction. But the humans didn't back down. They had been through worse. Captain Carter had seen the worst of humanity's enemies: alien species, invaders, and monsters that had tried to destroy Earth. But humanity always found a way to fight back. And this time, they would not lose. With a loud roar, the Ravager warlord charged, leading the assault himself. His massive form cut through the chaos of the battlefield, but the humans were ready. They had fought these kinds of battles before. Using their training, they set traps and ambushes to stop the Ravagers in their tracks. The battle was turning in their favor. Atheon, the Astelian leader, fought with newfound strength. He had become a true warrior in his own right, no longer the peaceful leader of a gentle people. His rifle fired with precision, taking down Ravager after Ravager as they approached. His team of Astelian warriors fought alongside him, each of them now hardened and skilled in the art of combat. Despite the Ravagers' fierce assault, the humans and Astelians held their ground. Captain Carter fought alongside them, his eyes focused on the goal ahead: the Ravager warlord. If they could take him down, they could win this war. The soldiers worked together, using every tactic they had learned to break through the Ravagers' defenses. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Ravager warlord fell. With a final, desperate scream, he collapsed, his body crumpling under the weight of the humans' fire. The Ravagers' forces faltered, their leadership shattered. The battle was almost over. Captain Carter breathed a sigh of relief, his heart pounding. They had done it, but he knew this was just one battle. The war was far from over, and they had to keep fighting until the Ravagers were defeated once and for all. The fall of the Ravager warlord had shaken the enemy, but the humans and Astelians knew they were not yet safe. The Ravagers were fierce, and despite the loss of their leader, they still had strength in numbers. The battle was far from over, and the humans had to finish what they had started. Captain Carter stood at the front of his team, looking out over the battlefield. The Ravagers were regrouping, pulling back into their stronghold, and preparing for a final push. This time, they were going to give everything they had. There would be no retreat. "We've come too far to stop now," Carter said, his voice filled with determination. "We finish this today." The humans and Astelians had suffered losses, but they had learned from every battle. They had become stronger, more organized, and more unified. Now, it was time for the final assault. The Ravagers' stronghold was in sight. The humans had set up a plan to take it down, and they would not stop until the enemy was defeated. The ground shook as the Ravagers launched another series of counterattacks. This time, they had brought out their most powerful weapons, massive siege machines capable of firing devastating blasts. But the humans were prepared. They had learned the Ravagers' tactics and knew how to counter them. Their advanced technology, combined with their will to survive, made them a force to be reckoned with. The Astelians had worked hard to create new weapons and gadgets that could level the playing field. They deployed energy shields to block incoming fire and used cloaking technology to sneak past the Ravager defenses. The humans set up traps to take down the massive siege machines before they could fire. The final battle began with a deafening roar. The Ravagers launched their assault, hoping to overwhelm the humans and Astalians with sheer force. But the humans fought back with everything they had. They moved quickly, using their training and knowledge of the battlefield to outmaneuver the Ravagers. Atheon, now fully transformed into a warrior, led the Astalians in their charge. His blue skin glistened under the sun as he fired his weapon, taking down Ravager after Ravager. His team followed, their advanced tech providing cover as they advanced. They worked together, moving with precision and strength, striking the Ravagers where they were weakest. Captain Carter and his team led the charge against the Ravager siege machines. They fought their way through the enemy lines, using explosives and heavy fire to disable the machines. Every step was hard-earned, every inch of ground fought for, but they pushed forward. As they reached the heart of the Ravager stronghold, the Ravagers knew the end was near. Their forces were scattered, and their weapons were failing. The humans and Astalians had become too powerful to be united. The Ravagers were not used to enemies who fought with such determination, and it was clear that their time was running out. With a final, determined push, Captain Carter and his team reached the central command center of the Ravager stronghold. They planted explosives, setting the charges to destroy the heart of the enemy's base. The countdown began. "It's over," Carter said, looking around at his team. "We've won." As the final seconds ticked down, the humans and Astalians retreated to safety. The explosions rocked the Ravager base, sending shockwaves through the ground. The battle was won. The Ravagers were defeated. But even as the dust settled and the smoke cleared, Captain Carter knew that their victory had come at a great cost. They had lost comrades along the way, and the war had taken its toll. But they had survived, and they had shown the Ravagers and the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The humans and Astalians had fought side by side, and together they had saved Earth and their new allies. It was a victory that would be remembered for generations. The war was over. The Ravagers had been defeated, and the human and Astalian forces stood victorious. The Ravager stronghold lay in ruins, and the once mighty invaders had been driven off the planet. Earth was safe again, but the cost had been high. Captain Carter surveyed the battlefield, his heart heavy with both pride and sorrow. So many lives had been lost in the fight for survival. His team had fought with courage, but they had also sacrificed much. The war had taken its toll on everyone, from the frontline soldiers to the Astalian diplomats who had become warriors in their own right. But despite the losses, they had triumphed. They had shown the galaxy that humanity and its allies would not bow down to any enemy. Atheon, the leader of the Astalians, stood beside him, his face solemn but resolute. "We have done it," he said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and grief. "But the cost is greater than we expected." Captain Carter nodded. "War always has a price," he said, his voice low. "But we did what we had to do." The Astalians, once a peaceful and fragile people, had fought bravely alongside the humans. They had adapted to the harsh realities of war, and in doing so, they had earned the respect of the humans. Atheon had led his people with honor, and now, standing among the survivors, he felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced the worst and come out on top. The humans and Astalians now looked toward the future. The war was over, but there was still much work to be done. The Ravagers had left behind devastation, and rebuilding would take time. But Captain Carter knew that they had something stronger than just weapons. They had each other. "We can't forget what we've lost," Carter said, turning to Atheon. "But we also can't forget what we've gained. We have new allies now. The galaxy will never see us the same way again." Atheon nodded. "The Astalians have learned much from the humans. We will rebuild, stronger than before, and we will stand together." As the survivors began the long process of recovery, Captain Carter stood with his team, watching as the sun began to set over the war-torn landscape. The stars that had once seemed so distant now felt closer, as if the galaxy itself had witnessed their victory. The humans and the Astelians had forged an unbreakable bond. They had fought side by side, and now they would rebuild the world and the future they had saved. The war was over, but the story of their bravery would live on. It would be remembered by all who heard it, a testament to the strength of humanity and its allies. For Captain Carter, the battle had been won, but the true victory was the hope for a peaceful future, a future where the lessons learned in the heat of battle could bring unity and strength to all the stars.